welcome into Fantasy Baseball today, and welcome to October, spooky season. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, it is our 2025 season recap. We'll take a look at league leaders, some league-wide trends. Is there anything to learn from that? And lingering questions for 2026. Chris, you're here, and the regular season is over. How are you feeling?
Good. It's always like, I don't know if you guys have this or if you guys have like a healthy relationship with your jobs and your own minds, but like I get really anxious when the season's over, which is really dumb because my job gets so much easier. Like I go from writing, 18,000 words a week and doing 4.5 hours of live podcasts every week to like less than half of that. And my body's like, this is bad. Something bad's going to happen. I'm like, come on, enjoy it. No, it was great. I was out of town the past week. I went to my friend's wedding. They rented out a summer camp in North Carolina. It was awesome. I did the blob and I didn't die. I went down a big slide and I didn't die. I had lake water go up my nose and I haven't died yet, so it seems like I'm fine. Then I went and visited some of my best friends after that, so I'm feeling good. Feeling good. It was a nice week.
Sounds like you did a lot of stuff without dying.
That's always the goal. Actually, like honestly, everything I do, that is the goal. That's the baseline goal. If I accomplish
that's the goal in life.
If I accomplish, well, I mean, we're all going to fail on that one.
Do everything you can without dying.
Yeah,
well, eventually, but
But
that's the way I thought our 2025 season recap would start, to be honest.
I mean, you could see this coming.
I hear you saying about the workflow definitely goes down, and don't get me wrong, I love what we do here for a living, but I'll also take a couple of months where we can kind of, refresh and get back on track and learn things before we kind of jump back into crazy content mode in 2026 as well. So should be fun today. I figured we start off with some playoff updates since it's timely, but also if somebody is listening to this over the weekend, some of the stuff is already outdated. So if you want to skip past this, go ahead. And also the start of this podcast could have had a very different tenor depending on what happened in that Yankees-Red Sox game. And my goodness, it was extremely stressful. Both games have been extremely stressful for both sides. I was at game one where the Yankees were winning most of that game. And then, of course, the bullpen falters late. Aroldis Chapman tried his best to give it up, but he didn't. He wound up striking out the final three batters that he faced. And then here, in game two, back and forth game, Ben Rice homered on the first pitch he saw in his playoff career. The Yankees scored later in the eighth inning. Bednar closed it out. In fact, the three series that have already played their games are all going to a third game, a game three elimination game. So the Tigers, Guardians, Padres, Cubs, Yankees, Red Sox are all tied 1-1. And right now we're recording. The Dodgers are blowing this game open.
Does not look like it's going to go to game three, unfortunately.
Yeah. Back to the Yankees Red Sox for a second. Pitchers duel between Crochet and Fried. I don't really think there's anything there to add. I mean, Crochet reminded us he's amazing and should be a borderline first round pick. He had 11 strikeouts over 7 1/3 innings.
Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
Crochet and Fried were Crochet and Fried. And wasn't that, I don't know, I'm changing games here now. The Tarek Skubal 14 strikeouts, that was a career high, right?
I don't know if it was a career high. I know it tied the Tigers postseason franchise record, but
yeah,
14 sounds like it would be a career high.
I probably should have looked it up before just saying it. That's something I am guilty of from time to time.
On the other side of that one, Gavin Williams wasn't as impressive, but from
it was great.
Yeah, from a analytical perspective for our purposes, he put together a heck of a run right there at the end of the season and then in his first postseason start at least, where I've been very vocally skeptical of him for a long time and to a large extent will continue to be, but
those last 5 starts plus the first playoff start were
he pitched in
chef's kiss.
in the final month or so of the season, he pitched like he deserved the results he was getting all season long. Is that the right way to put that? Because for about 4 months, he was getting ace results, at least in terms of his ERA, but everything else was pretty bad. And then
he wasn't that good in the first half. But the second half, he ended up with a 2.12 ERA, 10K per 9.
Yeah, the strikeouts came along.
I have been working the last 2 days on my Everything You Missed Once Fantasy Football Began article, which runs now and also when people are coming back in January. And it's always like my longest article of the year. Why I do that to myself after the season ends, I don't know.
I mean, you could just take like a whole week to do it. You don't have to like write it in one day, Scott.
Yeah, it's good foundational research for everything I'm going to talk about the next few months and even into next draft prep season. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is because Gavin Williams is the cover photo. Mm-hmm. He is the poster child for everything you missed once fantasy football began, in my mind, becoming, not quite an ace, but a legitimate difference maker in fantasy.
Certainly showing the ace upside that I think we hadn't seen since 2023. And do you have a good sense for how, Frank, I feel like we've already derailed your plans, but
no, it's fine.
Do you have a good sense for how it happened? He started basically throwing his curveball slider or his curveball sweeper and fastball four-seamer at the same rate, right around 25 to 30% on all three of them. Mm-hmm. The curveball and sweeper got really impressive whiff rates. His fastballs were kind of bad in September. I don't have a good sense of how exactly things came together.
I've tried to pin down how much of it is like pitch selection or pitch movement or whatever, and it just seems like you look month to month for Gavin Williams, and what changes in usage we saw in September we saw earlier in the season too. So I don't think it has much to do with that. I think it comes down to commanding better. Not that this is the definition of command, but just in terms of strike throwing, those final 5 regular season starts for Gavin Williams, he had a 66% strike rate. Everything before that, it was 61. That's a big difference.
Yeah. He also threw his cutter a lot less, which was his worst pitch all season. So maybe fewer cut. I know cutters are kind of, you can't always judge how effective a cutter is by what happens when they throw that pitch, because cutters are often bridge pitches that serve to set up fastballs or breaking balls. And so even if that pitch is bad on its own when they throw it, it can make the other pitches work better. But I don't think it's a coincidence that he started throwing his cutter less and got the best results of the season in September either.
Again, that was Gavin Williams, who, again, went head-to-head with Tarek Skubal in Game 1 of the wild card series there. The 14 strikeouts were a career high, regardless of any level or any season for Tarek Skubal. So
I'm glad we gave you enough time to look that up.
Tremendous start for him. Game 3 will be Jack Flaherty against Slade Ciccone. That's coming up here on Thursday. The Padres-Cubs also tied 1-1. Game 1, the Cubs got a couple home runs from Seiya Suzuki and Carson Kelly. Seiya Suzuki coming back to life the past couple of weeks after a really, really bad second half for him. In Game 2, Padres got a home run from Manny Machado. Their bullpen was ridiculous, which is one of the biggest strengths in the entire postseason. If you just look at starting pitchers, bullpens, lineups, the Padres bullpen is incredible. They threw 5 1/3 shutout innings, 1 hit, 0 walks, 6 strikeouts. 5 of those came from Mason Miller. He has been amazing.
Hit 105.
Yeah.
In this one, ridiculous.
Yeah, and one of those lingering questions for later on, if we get to them, and also will be in Scott's article, how will the Padres use Mason Miller next year? That is a big question. So will he be a starter? Will he be their closer? We don't know. Game 3 for the Padres-Cubs will be Yu Darvish going up against Jameson Taillon. Game 3 for the Yankees-Red Sox, by the way, nothing like 2 rookies battling it out in an elimination game. Cam Schlittler up against Connolly Early.
It will be the youngest pitcher to start a game for the Red Sox since 1916. Do you know who that was?
No.
I mean,
Babe Ruth?
Yeah, Babe Ruth. Yeah.
Right. I was like, oh, you said the year. It's
Yeah.
probably that guy.
The one name you might be able to come up with. Yeah.
You don't think of him on the Red Sox, but yes, that is where he started famously.
Yep. Dodgers, we mentioned, they're up 1-0. They're currently in the 7th inning of that game, up 7-2. So it looks like they're going to sweep that. In game 1, they got multiple homers from both Ohtani and Teoscar Hernandez. So nice to see Teoscar get going again. Blake Snell, 7 innings, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts. And it kind of looks like the Dodgers are peaking at the right time again. Or if you don't like the Dodgers, peaking at the wrong time for everybody else's fan base. So we'll see what happens here. Chris, wanted to get a World Series prediction from you the other day. From Scott, we got Mariners over Phillies. I had Phillies over Mariners. So I don't know how much you want to deviate from those two teams. I will mention your preseason prediction was Braves over Rangers. So
don't think that one's gonna happen. I'm not gonna do that one again. Dodgers
over.
I'm trying to think. I'm not going to pick any of the divisional, like any of the wild card round teams, because they're not. None of them are guaranteed. That could look bad. Dumb. That could look dumb tomorrow. So
and maybe the Reds rally.
I'll go with the Mariners.
Or
I'll go with the Mariners. I have a little more faith in that pitching staff.
All right, Seattle fans everywhere rejoicing. We all have them in the World Series. Hopefully, it's not the kiss of death. Let's take our first.
Padres in the World Series at the start of the playoffs last year, or at least Frank and I did.
That sounds right. Let's take our first break. When we return, we've got some quick notes to go over, how we did in our leagues, some league leaders, all that fun stuff. We'll do that right after this.
Only CBS Sports can bring you big time during the heart of Saturday afternoons. It's big time.
It's big time. It's big time. It's big time.
On CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. We'll quickly run through some news and notes. Not too much going on this time of year. Honestly, the biggest news is what we're getting on the manager front right now. So we learned Brian Snitker will not return as Braves manager. Instead, he will transition into a senior advisor role and will enter the Braves Hall of Fame in 2026. Scott, have you seen any leading candidates? Have you heard any rumblings on the Braves front?
I mean, there's rumblings. I don't know.
Is it Skip Schumacher?
I think it's all a wish list right now. I mean, Skip Schumacher would probably be at the top of the wish list if the Rangers didn't also have an opening, and he's already in the Rangers organization. Yeah. So that seems like a fait accompli, whatever, however you pronounce that. Yeah, I don't know. David Ross seems like a possibility because he has ties to the organization.
Don Mattingly's still out there, right?
He is. I have not.
He's a bench coach for the Blue Jays, right?
That sounds. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
I mean, I know I've seen some people mention Travis d'Arnaud getting him out of the final year of his contract. You make a lot more as a player than you do as a manager, so I don't think that's happening.
I wonder about Joe Girardi. I still think he's a good manager. I wonder if some team will bring Girardi back.
This is just me wishing off the top, I'm not starting a rumor. I don't know anything, but like Brian McCann would make a lot of sense to me. I don't know if he's at all interested. It's kind of surprising to me how many players who actually have legitimate careers where they make multiple millions of dollars then turn around to start managing. I feel like it happens a lot more than it used to, because the grind is the grind of the travel and every day. That's the whole downside of being a baseball player, right? But if you've already banked your millions, and you don't have to do that anymore to make a living, why? You really got to love baseball, I think, to turn around and start managing. Really like baseball and really not like time with your family?
Well, I think if you're the kind of person who becomes a professional baseball player, there's probably something in you that's, I don't want to say broken, but that needs it.
Yeah.
That there's a not for everyone, but I think there's an addiction that a lot of professional athletes have to it, and going from being wired 183 days out of the year plus spring training plus the playoffs, getting that fix every single day, going from that to just hanging out at home, I don't think MLB The Show's gonna scratch that itch for you.
There are
And
places
Brian
in
McCann,
between.
Brian McCann
managing-
seems like one of those guys who needs it. You know, like the way he played, he wasn't a particularly laid back sort.
He's been on the coaching staff for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic before. Oh, Mark DeRosa's been the manager of that team before, and his name always gets brought up in these rumors. So, I guess you could throw that on the pile.
Chris, you mentioned a player or former player just going home and playing MLB The Show and kind of getting their fix that way. I saw a fun quote from Jazz Chisholm. He wasn't in the Game 1 lineup famously against a left-handed pitcher, although they've already said he's going to play in Game 3. They said, "How did you handle that?" He said, "I went home and crushed somebody in MLB The Show, and that's how I got back on track." I was like,
force someone to rage quit. Yeah, I saw that.
Ron Washington and Ray Montgomery will not return to the Angels next season. So, and they're wasting no time. Apparently, they have big interest in Albert Pujols as the replacement.
Yeah, there's another example. Like, I don't feel like the previous generation of players, a star anywhere close to Albert Pujols' caliber, would have been interested in managing.
Frank Robinson was a manager for a very long time.
There are exceptions.
Jackie Robinson tried to be a manager. There was,
Ryan Sandberg managed. Matt Williams, who wasn't like Hall of Fame caliber, but was very good for a long time.
Did Pujols, has he he's done some managing so far.
He managed the team
Leones del Escogido.
I think the team that Junior Caminero played on in the
they won the Caribbean Series last year. Yeah. All right. I know Yadier Molina has been doing some managing for one of the Puerto Rican clubs. I think he might have been the Team Puerto Rico manager.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I always the Travis d'Arnaud one is weird because he's got zero. It's always weird when they just go with someone who hasn't even done it at any level. I think is always.
But
weird.
that's pretty common. It feels like now too.
Seems like it's happening a little more.
Stephen Vogt immediately comes to mind, and obviously,
but I think he managed or was like a bench coach for. He did some coaching
for 1 year.
I think so.
For 1 year. Yeah. And that 1 year makes all the difference.
That makes 8 teams with manager vacancies as of now: the Orioles, Twins, Rangers, Nationals, Rockies, Braves, Giants, and Angels.
Did you guys see the way the Angels announced Ron Washington was not returning as a manager?
Was it just a tweet?
They did a tweet with a blue sky background with pictures of him, and it looked like they were announcing something way different.
Yeah,
the way they did that. And
he had a health scare this year, which is
it was a weird decision for the organization. The Angels famously always making normal decisions. So
right. A couple other updates here. Brian Wu is slated to throw a bullpen session on Thursday, his first time throwing off a mound since suffering a right pec injury on September 19th. They're trying to get him ready for the ALDS. Bo Bichette has yet to resume running as he progresses from that PCL sprain in his left knee. The Blue Jays are trying to get him right for the ALDS on the other side. Spencer Torkelson had imaging done on his right foot after he fouled the ball off of it in Game 2. X-rays came back negative. Giants first base prospect Bryce Eldridge is out 8 weeks after having surgery to remove a bone spur in his left wrist. So 8 weeks from now, he should be all good to go, but something to pay attention to in spring training, likely battling for an opening day job with the Giants. And speaking of prospects, the Guardians did have outfielder Chase DeLauder make his major league debut in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series. I saw that he got on base at least one time. I didn't write in his full line here. He also dropped the ball in center field that he lost.
The first ball hit to him in the first inning. Yeah. This was crazy. It's not Kyle Schwarber, I think, made his MLB debut in the playoffs, if I'm remembering correctly. And there was another guy. Did Caminero make his debut in the playoffs? Or they called him up, but he didn't play?
I think
there was somebody just last year, I think, but I can't remember who now. It happens, but it's weird.
But this was an especially weird way to go about it because Chase DeLauder, look, if not for injuries, he would have been up already. And that was the justification that they used, but he hadn't played a game at all since July.
Yeah.
And he hadn't played center field since August of 2024. And they threw him out there in a playoff game in center field for his MLB debut. That felt a little unfair.
Yeah, he wound up going 0 for 2 with a walk in his major league debut there. Again, that was Chase DeLauder. Big thank you to everybody who is currently sending in thanks to us on social media. We really do appreciate it. If we helped you win your league or you just enjoy the podcast, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. It helps a lot. And a reminder of our off-season programming. Our schedule here will be live on Monday and Wednesday nights around 10:30, 11 p.m. Eastern time. Audio podcasts will be in your feed Tuesday and Thursday mornings. As for FBT Express, those episodes will now start showing up exclusively in the main FBT podcast feed. So don't be alarmed. If you're subscribed to FBT Express, you won't see anything there. It's all in the FBT feed. So again, the schedule, Tuesday mornings, you'll have a full-length podcast. Wednesday, FBT Express. Thursday, full-length pod. Friday, FBT Express.
Real quick. The player I was thinking of debuting in the postseason, I think I was thinking of Shane McClanahan. Obviously, that wasn't last year. It was 5 years ago. But,
the Rays have done this a few times, I think.
When you get to be middle-aged, last year and 5 years ago are might as well be the same. The most recent before DeLauder was actually Ryan Weathers. It was the same postseason as McClanahan. And then Alex Kirilloff also that same year, all in 2020.
Yeah, I remember I thought Garrett Crochet did it, but he actually did make a few appearances towards the end of the regular season in 2020, which was already kind of a weird shortened season. But he did pitch in the postseason after making just 5 appearances with the White Sox out of their bullpen. And then obviously he went on to become this amazing starting pitcher now. So boom. We love it. How did we do in our leagues? I know listeners like to get a recap of how we did. Scott and I spoke a little bit about this the other day. I figured we'll expand a little bit more. We'll find out how Chris did. And with that, Chris, how'd you do?
Yeah, I won 1 league out of 9. I made the playoffs in 4 out of my 6 head-to-head leagues and was alive into the last weekend in 1 roto league. My, quote-unquote experts leagues did not go super well. 11th in both tout and labor. Labor was AL only, and the recurring theme across a lot of my leagues is the pitching just never came together. Specifically in labor, I drafted Grayson Rodriguez and George Kirby as my aces before their spring training injuries, and then I lost Josh Hader mid-season. So
I think that draft was done on February 28th. So
yeah. A lot of the expert leagues were really early, yeah.
And so, and in an AL only league, losing your 2 aces and then your closer for the full season, I'm not going to say it's impossible to come back from that. Maybe somebody better than me could do that, but
there's no waiver wire in those leagues, so there's really no hope. I mean,
that was pretty tough. My offense was pretty good in that league, and similar story in tout. I actually had a great offense, even with like Devers being a little weird and Tatis not being a great head-to-head points player, and Gunnar Henderson obviously not living up to expectations. But it was just, I went really heavy on my offense. I tried to go cheap pitching. I had Zach Allen, I had Jesus Luzardo, I had Tyler Glasnow as my kind of 3 big pitchers in that league, and it never came together in either of those leagues. I did have our Memorial Magazine League, which is a roto salary cap league. I was in it right up until the end.
You finished 3rd and Frank finished 2nd. And that's the auction we do live. I think you mentioned here as the podcast. So Frank was 2nd, Chris was 3rd. Was
that a Greg Lathrop win?
9th. Yeah. Yes, that was the Greg Lathrop. We mentioned this the other day. He won that league for the 4th time in 7 years. I won it last year for what it's worth, but you and Frank, Chris, you were 2nd and 3rd this year.
I just could never make up ground in wins and saves. I think I ended up 10th in saves and like 9th in wins, and it was too hard to overcome that. On the whole, I'm interested in digging deep on my pitching strategy because that seems to be where my teams fell short this season. The last couple years, my pitching staffs have actually been better than my offenses. That was definitely not the case this year. Part of that was just I had a lot of George Kirby, and that went really south. Part of that is just in any league we drafted early, I had a lot of Grayson Rodriguez. That obviously could have gone better. But, I've had my very specific pitching strategy, which was always anchor ace, maybe a second guy in the 5th to 7th round range. But for the most part, I take one pitcher early, and then double-digit rounds is really where I make up a lot of my pitching staff. And that didn't work this year. And I don't know if it's just maybe I just picked the wrong guys. And if I had gone in on Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez, I'd be singing a different tune, and maybe I just picked the wrong guys. But I'm interested in, kind of diving deeper over the next couple of weeks, and, hopefully in time for the podcast that Frank is planning for next week, where we do a little more of the what we've learned. Because that's the biggest thing. Look, the one thing I will say is, what you don't want to do is react to a 1-year sample size, especially if it's reacting to a 1-year sample size of what happened to you, right? Because, my pitching strategy went sideways this season. Well, if I had drafted XYZ pitcher instead of ABC pitcher, maybe the whole pitching strategy works way better, and it's just I happened to miss on the wrong guys and hit on the wrong guys. But I do want to do, a holistic review of the pitching landscape for 2025 and see if there were any significant changes relative to recent years.
I think, and I don't know how much we want to get into this now, but I think the idea is that you can miss on a pitcher or two. And still, because you can't control for that, but obviously people win consistently. And it could be that your entire pitching staff is devastated by injuries, and you have to totally throw it together off the waiver wire, which is still possible in leagues of a certain depth. But the deeper the league gets, the harder it is to make up for injuries, as we were saying with your AL only league, Chris, where there is no waiver wire. So your biggest assets go down. What trade chips do you have at that point? You're clearly nothing to be found on the waiver wire. But in shallower leagues, the kind that most people probably play in, I would say pitching staffs are halfway assembled off the waiver wire. Just because that's the sort of position where there's a lot of variance from year to year and a lot of surprises over the course of a year. But I think the ideal strategy, even then, there's no foolproof one. But if you don't put all your eggs in one or two baskets, you can hopefully navigate those mishaps that are bound to happen at that position.
And in looking at the Memorial Magazine League, I had a good pitching staff. I hit on Nick Pivetta, Carlos Rodon had a great year, Nick Lodolo was great. That was a league where Tarek Skubal and George Kirby were my two aces, though, and I said wins were where I fell short in that league. Well, Tarek Skubal only won 13 games this year. I think he had 19 the year before. The Tigers weren't any worse in 2025 than they were in 2024. It just didn't work out for him. And then obviously Kirby was injured and weird for much of the season. He ended up with 10. And then Mason Miller, losing him as my closer, but not because he got hurt or was ineffective. That's a bummer. That just stinks.
Yeah, I am currently in the early process here of kind of diagnosing all my teams and figuring out what went wrong. One thing I like to do in all of my leagues as well is look at the team that won and see what they did. And not necessarily, you don't have to copy every single thing, but there are things to be learned, especially if it's people who win this league over and over again and seeing what that person does. And if it's something that they continuously do, is there a theme that's always on their teams? And I like to just kind of look at that across my different leagues. And, I look, for most people listening, I guess if you only play in one or two leagues, there might not be that much to learn from. But, I think I played in 16 leagues this year. And so when you have that much of a sample, you can kind of look all across and see what people did. And it's one thing that stood out so far is in two of my deeper industry auction leagues, the two teams that won went stars and scrubs. And that's something that's kind of just
deeper ones.
Yeah. It's kind of just been embedded in our brains, spread the wealth in deeper auction leagues, right? Try not to have any, $1 players or.
I still think that's right. That's.
Yeah.
I've played in those leagues long enough to know that, look, it can work if you happen to get very lucky with your scrubs, and maybe it's not fair to call it luck. I know actually it happened in the CBS, which league was it? I think it was CBS AL only. No, NL only. The CBS NL only league. The winner kind of took a stars and scrubs approach. But some of them, it was like, wow, he was fortunate to get Andrew Abbott for $2. Like, that probably shouldn't have happened in an NL only league, you know? So, you know, maybe sometimes you have a good feeling about those low dollar players. I'm talking about lower end than Abbott, because it's weird that happened in a league so deep. But usually the kind of players you can get for that cheap in leagues that deep, you can't really expect anything from them. And so do you want to stake your season on that? Just kind of hoping that die comes up as a 6 instead of a 1, 2, or 3? I don't. It doesn't usually work.
I don't think there's just one specific way to win. I just thought it was interesting, right? In Tout Wars, it's a 15-team roto auction. Brett Sayer, I believe, has won this league 2 of the past 3 years. He always does stars and scrubs. So there's clearly something that he's doing right. I think he had 3 $40+ players on that team, and he wound up winning it. And in NL only, again, this is an only league, the person who won had 3 players that were valued at $31 or more on this team. It was Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Zach Wheeler. And they actually lost Zach Wheeler, and Mookie Betts was the underperformer.
Well, how much did they go for?
Yeah.
So Betts for 33, Ohtani for 46, and Wheeler for 31.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, 33 and 31 isn't exorbitant for an only.
But $150 across, right? That's $110 across 3 players that's a lot.
When my idea of not going stars and scrubs, of spreading the wealth, is spending no more than $30 on any player. So it's not like that's way over that.
So that's exactly
Ohtani, 46.
That's what I did in NL Labor, is that all of my players were between, like, most of them were between $10 and $25. I didn't spend over $25 on a single player. The problem is my 2 most expensive players were Austin Riley and Dylan Cease. So it didn't really work.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of have to feel it out as it's happening. If these have to be more guidelines than rules, right? If like a true first round caliber player you can get for less than 35, then it's probably worth bending the rules a little for somebody who's that impactful. But if they're all going for like 40+, it's like, I'll stick to those $28, $26 guys, you know?
What I will say is, one, the best strategy, as always, is draft the good players. And 2, if there was one weird trick that fantasy baseball analysts hate that could win your league every year, we'd be out of jobs. And that's just not how it works. You know, ultimately what works in one league isn't going to work in every league, because every league's going to be a little bit different. So, you know, that's kind of always the takeaway from these discussions.
So I did just want to quickly recap again from what I said the other day. I played in 16 total leagues, 7 of those being normal redraft leagues, 6 of those draft and hold. So the draft and hold, there's not as much maintenance on those. It's just setting lineups. 1 dynasty, 1 keeper, 1 score sheet sim league. I only won 1 of those leagues. It was my home keeper league, a 12-team head-to-head points with 4 keepers on each team. It's the same league I won last year, the only league I won last year as well. So as always, would love to win more leagues if I could. Did have some close finishes, 2nd in Tout Wars, 2nd in the Memorial Magazine League, which we mentioned. I also made the playoffs in our score sheet league. Scott, I think we're both in that league together, and that's still going on. We had the 3rd best record out of 24 teams, we being Nando and I, but it's
really just you.
Kind of just I, but I always text him about what's going on the team. He's like, ha 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 ha, we. He understands the assignment at this point. Other industry leagues, I finished 7th in NL Labor and 6th in TGFBI. Very interesting scoring setup, though, just for TGFBI. The winner was 107.5 standings points, and I was 6th with 96.5. So it was very bunched up at the top.
That's very close.
There was a lot of movement, and I could have very easily finished 2nd or 3rd, but just the way the cookie crumbled. All right, Scott. Anything else that you'd like to add on your league?
It's not important. I think we got better stuff to talk about.
Let's take our final break. When we return, league leaders, league-wide trends. We'll talk about that right after this.
Saturday kicks off at noon, and it's big time. First, Air Force and Navy face off in Annapolis. Then it's big time at the Rose Bowl when UCLA hosts Penn State.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. Let's take a look at the league leaders from this past season. Batting average, number 1, Aaron Judge with a bullet, 331 batting average. It was not close. The next closest behind him was Bo Bichette and Jacob Wilson, who were 20 points behind at 311. And how about this? Trey Turner won the NL batting title with just a 304 batting average, the lowest by an NL batting champion since the league was founded in 1876. The only AL batting champ lower than the 304 mark was Carl Yastrzemski, who hit 301 back in 1968. So
I believe Trey Turner was the only NL player to hit 300. So we came very close to having the first sub 300 hitting batting title winner.
Well, how about this? I think for the first time in a non-strike shortened season, no player had 185 hits in the majors this season. There were 6 who did it last year. Yeah, that's kind of wild.
Yeah, so I guess the takeaway there, and again, just because it happens one year doesn't mean it'll happen the same next year, but finding elite batting average up at the top is about as hard as it's ever been in fantasy baseball. So we had 7 qualified hitters hit 300 or higher this season, the same number last year, and that number was 9 at 300 or better back in 2023. On the home runs, we had Cal Raleigh lead the league with 60. Again, that was most all-time by a catcher, most all-time by a switch hitter. Kyle Schwarber had 56. Shohei Ohtani had 55. Aaron Judge had 53. The first time that we had 4 hitters with 50-plus home runs since 2001, which was the midst of the steroid era. It was the peak. We had Bonds with 73, Sammy Sosa with 64, Luis Gonzalez with 57, A-Rod with 52. So high-end home runs.
Eugenio Suarez.
Yeah, just missed.
Could have hit that one more to make it 5 with 50-plus for the first time, but he didn't. He finished at 49.
So we had 7 total with 40-plus home runs this season, only 4 in 2024. So while we lost high-end batting average output, we did gain high-end home run output this past season. Is there any takeaway from that?
Well, what's interesting is league-wide batting average was actually up slightly from last season. It was 245 to 243, so it's not a huge difference. But if your takeaway from only one NL player hit 300 and only three players total hit 310, is that batting average must have been down league wide. That wasn't necessarily the case. It's just we didn't have those high end outliers this season, and part of that is like Luis Arias seems to have kind of jumped the shark a little bit on not making contact or making contact but not hitting the ball hard. And like Trey Turner, he might have almost not qualified given the time he missed with injury. So I don't take too much from this, except to say that Aaron Judge was even more valuable than usual this season, even though it wasn't necessarily the best season from him, because he was such a huge help in batting average in a way that's kind of who he is now. He's not a 330 hitter, but he's got to be hitting well over 300 over the past 4 seasons, I would guess.
How about this?
311 over the past 4 seasons combined.
Wow.
How about this? You mentioned, the number of 40 homer hitters, 30 homer hitters, 33 this year compared to 23 last year. And yet the total of number of home runs hit was pretty similar, right?
Yeah, it wasn't notably higher. I don't know.
It was up quite a bit from last year. So we had 5,650 total home runs. Last year it was 5,453. So almost 200 more home runs.
That's not a huge difference though. From
that's
league-wide.
How many is that per game?
And the home run to fly ball ratio was negligible. It was
that's what I'm saying.
11.9% this year.
The home run environment it's been basically the same 3 of the last 4 years. 2023 it was much more favorable to home runs. I mean, it wasn't 2019 standards, but it was much more favorable 2023 than it has been in 2022, 2024, 2025.
It was basically about 1 extra home run every 2 days across the league.
Yeah, it's not
and one home run every 25 games, basically. There's not really anything there. I think it's just.
I just think it was more separation between the top home run hitters and everyone else.
But
I don't.
Makes
that a category that, if we just apply it moving forward, which we shouldn't, but if we were to, then it would say, okay, well, you need to make home runs more of a priority early. I kind of feel like that's been the case for the past few years anyway, but maybe 2025 serves as more of a indicator of that.
Do you think that the high-end home run output is perhaps correlated with the high-end stolen base output being down as much as it was this year compared to the first 2 years that we had these new rules to promote stolen bases? Basically, like the league leader this year was Jose Caballero with 49. Last year, Ellie De La Cruz had 67. In 2023, Acuna had 73. Even if you look at in the previous 2 years before this, we had 3 hitters with 50-plus steals in each of those seasons. This year, we didn't have a single with 50, and we only had 3 with 40-plus. So I don't know if these are correlated. Perhaps teams are trying to hit for more power, and we just didn't have as many opportunities to run.
I think part of that, maybe, but isn't part of it also Chandler Simpson wasn't up all year?
Yeah,
and part of it's that Ellie De La Cruz got hurt and clearly wasn't himself in the second half of the season. And
I think it's kind of circumstantial. Like, we knew Ohtani wasn't going to run more because he was pitching.
Yeah.
Acuna was coming back from the knee injury.
Like, if Jose Caballero got 600 plate appearances, which he shouldn't because he's a very bad hitter, but if he did, he might steal 60 bases. If Chandler Simpson is up on opening day next season and doesn't get sent down and plays every day, he's probably going to hit 60-plus. If Ellie De La Cruz is healthy, I imagine we're going to see a bounce back from him as well because he really stopped running quite as much in the second half. So
if Corbin Carroll runs all season like he did in the second half this past year, maybe he gets back to being one of the high-end base stealers.
Luis Robert had 33 in 110 games. He could have stolen 50 if he stayed healthy.
Yeah.
Whatever Juan Soto is going to do in 2026, I have genuinely no idea. So I think Josh Naylor got to 30. That's incredible.
Soto came so close to 40. 30.
Soto came very close to a 40-40 season. I think if Chandler Simpson played more, he gets to that close to 70. If Caballero was an everyday player, he probably gets close there. If Ellie De La Cruz doesn't get hurt, you're probably looking at 50-plus there. So as with home runs, the gap between 2021 and 2025, or 2024 and 2025 in stolen bases is actually smaller than the gap in home runs. It's about 170 if I'm doing the math right. So that's another one where you're talking probably once every 30 or so games. I don't think there's anything to take from that.
The runs leader, Ohtani, had 146 runs scored. That was the most since 2 years ago when Ronald Acuna had 149. So not really anything notable that I saw there with runs scored statistic. RBI, Kyle Schwarber had 132. Judge had 144 last year. So didn't really see anything that stood out for either runs or RBI in terms of fantasy this past season. On the pitching side, the wins leader was Max Fried with 19. Garrett Crochet and Carlos Rodon were both tied for second with 18 wins each. Last year, we had Sale and Skubal with 18 each. In 2023, we had Strider with 20. So 18 to 20 kind of feels like the sweet spot right now for your wins leader. I don't know if there's anything to take away from that. It's just...
I'd be more interested in finding out like how many players had, I don't know, 15 plus, 12 plus, a lower threshold than the very top guy, and how that has changed. I mean, I'm sure if you go back 5 or 6 years, it's changed a lot, but
You're looking for how many have gotten like 15?
So if 7 got 15 this year, let's start with that. 7 got 15 this year versus last year.
I can do it real quick.
Okay, but last year was 11.
So the last 5 years, it's 7, 11, 8, 14, 5. 5 was 2021. That was coming off the 2020 shortened season. So innings were down across the board. But
that was for 15 wins, right?
Yeah, that was for 15 wins.
Say that again. Say those numbers again.
7, 11, 8, 14, 5 over the past 5 seasons. There's a little fluctuation.
Feels kind of unpredictable.
Yeah, there was a little fluctuation, 2021 being the obvious standout. What's really notable is you go the 4 years before 2020, 17, 19, 17, 23.
Yeah, everything.
So 2020, I think 2020 is going to go down as a kind of landmark year in the pitching landscape. That's when the number of 200 inning starters basically collapsed. The number of 180 inning starters basically collapsed. And those things are going to be heavily correlated with wins. The distribution of wins is random. Tarek Skubal was the best pitcher in the American League, at least, and he got 13. Paul Skeens, did he get to 10?
Yeah, he finished 10-10.
Just got to 10, and he had a sub-2 ERA. So, good pitchers on good teams get wins. Good pitchers on bad teams get fewer wins. Carlos Rodon has gotten a lot of wins the past 2 seasons, despite being iffy, I think fair to say, across both, although in 2025, much better. But yeah, I think when you look at any good pitcher, you set your expectation at 15 plus or minus 4, and there's basically no way to predict who's going to get the 4 on the plus side and the 4 on the negative side. Max Fried getting 19, he was really good, except for that month and a half or so where he wasn't. He threw a career high in innings, and he pitched for a pretty good team. But, the Yankees weren't the best team in baseball, despite having 2 of the 3 guys with 18 wins. There's a lot of randomness there.
The Yankees' record actually wound up a lot better than you might even realize. I mean, they were tied for the best record in the American League with 94 wins. They played in the wild card game because they lost the tiebreaker to the Blue Jays. But I think they actually wound up with the either 3rd or 4th best record in all of baseball. So actually wound up with a good amount of wins. And yeah, you mentioned Rodon and Fried. They both went deep into their starts. I did have the numbers on pitchers with 200 innings or more. So this past season, we had just 3 with 200 plus innings. Last year it was 4. The year before that it was 5. So next year you should expect 2 to give you 200 plus. Back in 2022 it was 8, and in 2021 it was 4. So that was coming off the COVID season. But really, 2022 was our last kind of, I don't even want to say big season, but kind of our last outlier season in terms of workload, innings eaters, 8 with 200 plus, and it's just been consistently kind of trending down since 2022. Our strikeouts leader was Garrett Crochet with 255. Tarek Skubal was second with 241. We had 12 total with 200 plus strikeouts. Last year, Skubal led all of baseball with 228. So pretty big jump up from 228 to 255 here for Crochet as the league leader. Last year, we had 11 with 200 plus strikeouts, so actually 1 less than this past season. Back in 2023, Strider led baseball with 281 strikeouts. So that was a lot more than this year. And we had 17 pitchers with 200 plus strikeouts back in 23. So 5 more than we just saw this past season. The ERA leader was Paul Skeens at 1.97. That was the lowest by a pitcher with at least 180 innings since DeGrom had a 170 ERA back in 2018. And again, it just led to 10 wins for Paul Skeens. So good old Pirates, I guess.
Throw the Pirates in the Allegheny River. That's what I say.
How about this? The high-end ERA contributors, actually, there was a lot more this season than the previous 2 years. This year, we had 12 qualified starters with an ERA under 3. Last year it was 9. The year before that it was 5. So the high-end contributors in ERA were actually very plentiful this past season.
I wonder how many more pitchers qualified this. Actually, fewer pitchers qualified this season, 52 versus 58 in 2024. So that's interesting.
And the league-wide ERA and WHIP actually went up slightly this year than compared to last year. So it feels like there was maybe a little bit of a bigger disparity between the aces, the halves, and maybe the mid-tier or maybe even the lower tier, which is like just the complete have-nots.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. Like I said, I plan on doing a deeper dive. None of the sub 3 ERA guys. I would say there's one that really stands out as an outlier. Andrew Abbott. We've talked a lot over the past couple of years about what a weird pitcher he is. He's one of these cross-body throwing
biggest
lefties
weirdo winner for 2025.
Yeah, generates a lot of weak contact, has a good enough strikeout rate, very good control this season. So like, it's not totally unreasonable, but he's the one, if you had to pick one to not repeat in 2026. I think Andrew Abbott's probably the one.
Freddie Peralta too, although look,
yeah, I mean,
established he's really good, but he's more of like a mid to high 3s.
I mean, the skill set is stronger than Andrew Abbott's, but yes, I agree.
Most anybody who finishes with an ERA under 3, I would predict them not to the following year. Exceptions would be Skeens, Skubal, and Crochet. Like I feel pretty safe about them having an ERA below 3. Not that it's a given, but I feel pretty safe.
It would be surprising.
Yeah. And there are others who could. I'm not saying they're all going to finish with an ERA over 3, but if you're just playing the odds, I think it's safe to think, okay, maybe a low 3s ERA next year for the Max
one I would
Fried
say is
or
Yamamoto.
Yamamoto.
I do think I expect he
doesn't have. I almost said him too, actually. Like
he's just for 9 and ground balls at that rate. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's just I think because that might be surprising because I'm not going to rank him as my number 4 SP. I don't know if you guys are.
He's either 4 or 5 for me.
I think I'm leaning that way.
It's just it's a volume deficit for him. That's the biggest thing. Is that I think we probably saw pretty close to a best case scenario for Yoshinobu Yamamoto this season, and it was 173 and 2/3 innings. I would guess it's about 185 strikeouts.
201.
Oh, you got to 200. Okay. But he just doesn't have the high end outcomes that someone like Chris Sale or Logan Gilbert could have if all goes right.
The WHIP leader was Tarek Skubal with a .89 WHIP this season. That was the same as Logan Gilbert last year. We had 6 qualified starting pitchers with a WHIP under 1. Last year, that was 4. And in 2023, there was just 1 qualified pitcher with a WHIP under 1. So again, it's just the high-end ratios contributors were really high-end and really big helps this season at both ERA and WHIP. The saves leader was Carlos Estevez with 42. Last year, Ryan Helsley led baseball with 49. We had 2 with 40-plus saves this year. Last season, that was 2 as well. In 2023, that was just 1. And if you look at 30-plus saves, this year we had 8. Last year we had 8. The year before that, we had 12. 2023 kind of feels like an outlier in terms of 30-plus saves contributors. We also just had a lot of managers that were more likely to stick with one closer. And again, saves and bullpens are so fickle, so hard to predict. That's the difference between us having a great closer landscape and a great saves landscape. Really, some of the time could just be the managers. Like, which managers do we have that season, and are they willing to just lock in? Because we lost Skip Schumacher from 2023 as the manager, and he would just always just stick with one guy. So maybe if we get him back.
Well, the Marlins didn't have Tanner Scott as well.
True.
As someone who's been writing the bullpen report, periodically updating all the closer situations that are most in flux around the league on a near weekly basis for the past few years, I think it was less the issue this year with few 30 saves guys was less about managers kind of going by committee. Certainly Dave Roberts in Los Angeles did. But as a whole, it it wasn't so big of a problem. It was more just there were some teams that didn't have a good option to begin with, like the Marlins, for instance, like the Rangers, for instance.
The Marlins do not have a closer, and they never will ever again.
I think that's reasonable.
And a lot of closers were moved at the trade deadline. So if that didn't happen, we would have had more guys with 30-plus saves because they were trending that way. Some of those who were traded out of the role, certainly like Mason Miller.
Miller, Finnegan definitely come to mind. Those two, they had huge saves totals at the deadline. So, yeah, that is a fair point. Want to take a look at some league-wide trends here and see if we have any takeaways from these. The offensive environment, Chris already mentioned this, but we had a 245 league-wide batting average with a 719 OPS. Pretty comparable to last year when it was 243 and 711, so it was up slightly. And back in 2023, that was 248 and a 734 OPS. So the batting average similar. The OPS, I think 2023 was a pretty fruitful year in terms of offense. So the last 2 years, 2024 and 5, look pretty similar in terms of offensive environment, I would say.
Yeah, I think we've reached
it's
an
three
equilibrium.
of the last 4. Yeah, 3 of the last 4. I was going to say the same thing. Like I feel like after some of the greatly fluctuating offensive environments that we saw in the first half of this decade, and even prior to that, maybe over the last whole decade.
2019 was the really crazy home run season, I believe.
Yeah, I think we've kind of reached a period of stasis. That 2023 season stands out as the outlier in terms of being really prolific for offense. And, still 3 out of 4 is not a huge sample. So if next year the ball was flying again, I don't think it should shock anybody, but hopefully this is going to become less of a talking point moving forward because we have reached this point of equilibrium.
We spoke about stolen bases already, but we had 3,440 total across baseball. That was down 177 from last year. It was down 63 from 2023, but still way up from 2022, which again, that was before we had these new rules that kind of promoted stolen bases. So it's down a little bit from the first 2 years with those rules intact, but we still did get a lot of steals across baseball this year. We spoke about some theories already. I think, again, the player pool, some circumstances, Ellie getting hurt, Acuna missed time, Ohtani wasn't running. I think if we get a full season from Chandler Simpson next year, a healthy season from Ellie De La Cruz, we probably get some 50 or 60-plus stolen base seasons again in 2026.
I also want to point out, this is something that I don't think we've mentioned, but Ellie De La Cruz did have a death in his family. His sister passed away. Right around mid-season, and that's one of those things that we can't know how that's going to affect players, but obviously these are human beings, and his second half slump very well could have been as a result of what he was going through off the field as well. So I feel like it's worth mentioning that one as well.
Yeah, in a game where you're so into and focused on the numbers.
It's a mental game. 90% is mental, 100% of the rest is physical, or whatever the Yogi Berra quote is.
I mean, we lose track, honestly. We just lose track of these guys being human, and they have things that are going on off the field as well. Same thing with Brendan Doyle, right? I believe him and his wife, lost a baby very early on in the season and could have just derailed his entire year. And then, he did get things going back in the second half. So you never really know what people are going through. In terms of home runs, we had 5,650 total this past season, which is just about exactly in between 2024 and 2023. So it was 200 more than last year, and it was 200 less than back in 2023. But as we pointed out, the home run to fly ball rates were pretty negligible year over year the past 2 years. 2023 kind of looks like an outlier in terms of home run to fly ball rate. I did want to mention some StatCast data real quick because we have data that goes back all the way to 2015. So in 2025, we saw the highest league average exit velocity, 89.4 miles per hour, the highest max exit velocity of all time, the highest barrel rate, the highest hard hit rate, the highest XBA, and the highest xWOBA. I don't know if there's anything to take away from that, but my guess is it's probably just going to keep trending up a little bit until I guess we kind of hit some plateau.
So what I would say is it's similar to what we've seen across pitching is, as soon as we started having league-wide the ability to measure velocity league-wide, velocity shot up. And we've pretty much hit an equilibrium this year or over the past few seasons where maybe it ticks up a half mile per hour, 1.1 mile per hour. We're not seeing huge jumps. I would guess we're not at that point with the hitter side, but it's got to be like Mecklenburg's Law or something. I don't know, like where once you start measuring something, people start training for the thing that you're measuring for. There's got to be some kind of law for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would guess this is a product of that, but it is interesting that pitching velocity keeps going up. Strikeout rates have pretty much plateaued. All the hitting stuff keeps going up. Offenses haven't gotten better. It's that cat and mouse game is always so fascinating to me in that it doesn't actually seem to change things all that much on a year-to-year basis, even though you look at 5 years ago, pitchers are throwing 1.5 miles per hour harder, and hitters are probably hitting, 1 mile per hour harder on average.
On the pitching side, we had a league-wide 4.16 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, both up slightly from last year, not nearly as high as they were back in 2023. If you look at strikeout rate and walk rate, basically right in line 3 years in a row. It's right around 8.5 K per nine, a 22 to 23% strikeout rate, just over, right around 3.1, 3.2 walks per nine. Is there anything that you could take away from ERA, WHIP, strikeout, walks this past season?
I think with the strikeouts, exactly what Chris was just saying, that it is noteworthy that it's kind of holding steady now, because I actually, in 2020 when there wasn't baseball going on, but thankfully we still had jobs, and so I was having to get creative with my content ideas that nobody was reading. One of the things I did. Oh, I appreciate that. One of the things I did that I really liked is I did a year-by-year breakdown of my oldest fantasy league. It was at that point, I think it was exactly 20 years. And I chronicled just a few different notable data points. One of them was league-wide strikeout rate. And it was amazing how over the course of those 20 years, the strikeout rate just kept going up and up and up and up with no drop. Mm-hmm. And then I think right after I wrote that article, I don't know if it was the very next year, but soon afterward, we finally saw a drop in strikeout rate. And then it's kind of just held steady. So I think we've reached that point where there's just not much to gain anymore from, everybody's already maxed out their velocity, and they've so mastered how to manipulate the baseball and how to maximize physical outputs that it's plateaued.
And I think part of it is also where we're seeing a move away from, notably, the just throw your best pitch as much as possible. And now the number of pitchers who throw 5, 6, 7 different pitches is notably higher than it used to be. And
some of the elite pitchers, too, like Paul Skeens throws 6, 7 pitches now. And it's not typically the best pitchers would be like 2, 3.
You think about Spencer Strider a couple of years ago. He had 285 strikeouts. It was just fastball slider. He that was all he threw. And I think the chase for strikeouts has gone away, and it's more, kind of more of the Seth Lugo approach, where you're not necessarily chasing as many strikeouts. You'd love to get strikeouts. Strikeouts are almost a guaranteed out. That's a phenomenal outcome. But if you can keep hitters off balance and generate weak contact, and that is a way to succeed as well. And we've seen a lot of guys, notably having success that way, especially, it seemed this year, especially a lot of lefties. And even like Garrett Crochet, last year was a very limited repertoire. And now he's kind of,
it's 4 different pitches, legitimately 4 different pitches.
And depending on whether it's a lefty versus a righty, he's kind of got this completely, that's what you see a lot more of, is guys completely change their arsenals, depending on if they're facing a lefty or a righty, in a way that I don't really remember being as widespread.
And we kind of heard this firsthand from Corbin Burns, right? We saw a big fall off from his strikeouts, and he even said in an interview, if I can get an out earlier in the count and kind of extend my season or extend my career by being able to go deeper into games and provide more innings, if I get an out, 2 or 3 pitches into an at bat instead of 5 or 6 chasing a strikeout, why wouldn't I do that? I also think there's an elephant in the room, like the sticky stuff and, them cracking down on that obviously helped get, lower the strikeout rates and things like that. So, yeah. All right. Here we are. That's it. That's all I've got for today. I mean, we were going to do lingering questions, but that was kind of like in case we needed some time to fill, which we obviously never need. But
we managed to go over an hour without filling out the rundown.
I think we'll do some of those lingering questions on FBT Express. Ooh. So if you want to hear about those, that's a little tease there for you. Make sure you check out our latest FBT Express episode. We are going to wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.